The Galactic Empire laughed. Their voices echoed across the chamber, shrill, booming, guttural, alien tones blending into a single, condescending chorus. At the center of the dome-shaped hall stood a solitary figure, small compared to the towering forms that surrounded her, human among titans. Ambassador Lyra Mendez, representing a shattered world, stood with her back straight and her hands folded in front of her. High Chancellor Arketh of the Valari Dominion curled one lip back in an expression of amusement. You plead for mercy after your kind resisted protocol. Earth ignored the evacuation mandate. You were warned. No reply, just the still silence of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Another voice chimed in, this one oily, thin, belonging to the ambassador of the Threx Collective. They call themselves sentient, but act like beasts, digging trenches in dirt, using combustion weapons. Charming, really. Lyra didn't blink. Chancellor Arketh stepped forward, his 7-foot frame cloaked in imperial robes woven from gravity-threaded silk. You presume to stand here, before the Empire, after your rebellion? Your resistance was inefficient. We cleaned the infection. A low hum of agreement passed through the chamber. Lyra's voice, when it finally came, was not loud, but it cut through the din like a blade. You murdered our children. Silence. Abrupt. Jarring. As if someone had choked the life out of the room. Arketh's brow twitched. Pardon? You murdered our children, Lyra repeated, slower this time. Her accent was unmistakably Terran. Every syllable rang, with precision and pain. Not combatants. Not soldiers. Children. Sleeping in homes. Hiding under schools. Buried in shelters. You didn't eliminate a threat. You killed the future of a people. One of the lesser delegates shifted in his seat. The ambassador of the Zoran Confederacy lowered his eyes. Lyra took one step forward. Do you think this is a moment of triumph? That your machines prove superior? That orbital strikes make you gods? Let me tell you what your precision bombardment accomplished. She inhaled sharply, eyes blazing. You ended conversations that were never spoken. You silenced songs never sung. You burned down every dream that hadn't yet had the chance to become real. The Threx ambassador muttered, your species bred instability. It was containment. No, she shot back, suddenly louder, emotion creeping in her voice. It was convenience. You didn't want to understand us. You wanted us quiet. You wanted us compliant. You got neither. So you chose extermination. Arketh waved a hand lazily. The Empire does not exterminate. It stabilizes. Earth resisted stability. Lyra almost smiled, but it wasn't warmth. It was grief sharpened into something close to contempt. We sent diplomats. You sent warships. We built shelters. You sent kinetic rods. You don't stabilize, you silence. You don't negotiate, you annihilate. Arketh's tone shifted, clipped now. Your casualty numbers are irrelevant to imperial calculus. To you, perhaps. But not to the rest of the galaxy. Not to the ones watching, listening, wondering when their children will be next. Another silence. This one longer. She stepped to the center of the floor, her voice steady again. I'm not here to argue for vengeance. I am here, so someone says it out loud, that the Empire murdered our children. That this, she gestured around her, is not civilization. It's just conquest with prettier robes. One of the minor officials near the far ring stood, opened his mouth, then sat back down without speaking. In the vacuum her words created, no laughter returned. Lyra looked directly at Arketh. You think you've ended something. You haven't. You've begun something you don't understand. Arketh's eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, human? It's a fact. And then she folded her hands once more. Quiet again. Small again. But no one in that vast chamber saw her the same way now. They came from orbit in silence. No declarations, no warnings. Just streaks of metal and fire tearing through the atmosphere. Cities vanished in seconds. Millions turned to dust. The ground split open, and the sky rained concrete and flame. No enemy in sight. No chance to run. It wasn't war. It was extermination. In the eastern quadrant of Earth, Lyra Mendez held her daughter's hand as alarm screamed across the horizon. The shelter beneath their neighborhood school trembled with each impact. Children cried. Parents prayed. Dust choked the air. And when the ceiling finally caved in, Lyra woke up 2 days later, buried in rubble, her daughter's fingers cold in her own. She didn't scream. She didn't weep. She simply closed her daughter's eyes and began digging. The Earth that emerged from those first attacks wasn't the same world the Empire expected to find. It didn't collapse. It didn't kneel. It adapted. From tunnels, bunkers, and broken cities, humanity learned to move in silence, to strike in shadows, to fight with fire made from scrap and anger. Soldiers no longer wore uniforms. Farmers became snipers. Students became engineers of war. Entire cities operated underground. Power grids were rebuilt with stolen tech. Ancient mountains were hollowed out to hide the last remnants of civilization. The Empire called them rats. Vermin. But rats have teeth. When drones descended to scan for survivors, they didn't return. When scout teams landed, they vanished. Every probe hacked. Every signal traced. Earth had turned its pain into code, its grief into strategy. And at the center of this quiet storm stood Lyra, no longer a mother, no longer just a diplomat. She became the voice of the ashes. She attended strategy briefings in half-lit bunkers where generals bled from wounds they had no time to treat. She watched children rig EMPs and laughed once, bitterly, when a 12-year-old fried an Imperial tank using a microwave and a car battery. This was not the war the Empire had prepared for. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't logical. It was human. Colonies on Mars, Europa, and the Belt had gone silent when the Empire struck. But one by one, encrypted signals reached Earth. Survivors, fighters, scientists in cryolabs building weapons humanity had never dared use. Not for lack of power, but principle. That restraint died with the first child buried under Imperial steel. Lyra became the bridge. She carried the weight of every name on makeshift memorials etched into bunker walls. She stood at the center of humanity's last transmission to the stars. Not a plea, not surrender, but testimony. The footage was raw. A child's broken toy in a crater. A woman clawing at debris to find her brother. A man walking alone with a flag made of bloodied sheets. These images burned into the galaxy, broadcast in stolen Imperial bandwidth. The Empire tried to suppress it. They failed. She volunteered for the delegation herself. Not because she believed the Empire would listen, but because someone had to speak, even if every word fell on ears tuned only to power. The council invitation came cloaked in mock diplomacy. A formality. A gesture of superiority. But Lyra accepted. And when she stepped aboard the diplomatic vessel, carrying only a recording chip filled with names and images, she walked not as a survivor, but as consequence. Behind her, the planet still burned, but also breathed. In the shadows of ruins, humanity prepared, not for peace, but for return. Not to be accepted, but to be remembered. The Empire had expected silence. Instead, it received a name carved in iron and grief, humanity. They had not asked for war. They had asked to live. And when that was denied, they learned to speak in fire. Lyra never practiced her speech. It wasn't written. It lived in her bones. Every step to the council chamber was a step away from who she had been and toward who she had become. The ambassador of the dead. The memory of children crushed by laughter in high places. She would not scream. She would not beg. She would speak. And that would be enough. Lyra's voice didn't tremble. Not when she described the bodies. Not when she named the cities erased from maps. Not when she looked the High Chancellor in the eye and said, "You are not feared. You are pitted." Arquette scoffed, but he didn't laugh this time. "You pride yourselves on logic," she continued. "On order. On control. But those things mean nothing without empathy. Without the ability to see value beyond utility. You call us erratic, emotional, dangerous. But it was your detachment that led you here. You committed genocide with clinical precision and expected silence." She paused. "You misunderstand us. No theatrics. No raised tone. Just a simple correction. You believe power comes from fleets, from numbers, from the cold efficiency of machinery. But our power isn't found in what we destroy. It's found in what we endure. We've lived through extinction-level events. We've burned, drowned, frozen, and starved. And every time, we rose again. Not because we were the strongest, because we refused to stay down. She let that hang in the air. You thought orbital bombardment would finish us, but you only taught us to fight without looking up. A ripple of unease passed through the outer delegates. Even those loyal to the Empire shifted in their seats. They weren't used to this tone from a species on the brink of extinction. Keth finally spoke. You are outnumbered, outgunned. You cannot win. Lyra's reply came without hesitation. Winning isn't always about survival. Sometimes it's about what you leave behind. Her gaze swept the chamber. Look at your allies, your subjects. Ask them how many messages they've received from Earth. How many images? How many voices have reached their channels? We've shown them the truth. They know what you did. One of the Zoran delegates looked away. Our dead speak in every transmission. Not threats. Memories. Children laughing, then screaming. Families holding hands beneath rubble. We didn't beg for help. We just showed them what you are. Keth clenched his jaw. Propaganda. No, she said, stepping forward. Proof. You called us primitive. You assumed we had no reach. But we hacked your networks. We bypassed your firewalls. We used your own relays to tell the galaxy what you tried to erase. She stopped a few feet from the central platform. We've built a fleet. Not large, not pretty, but built from what we had left. Mining rigs, cargo haulers, retrofit transports. All weaponized, all united. They're not coming to beg. They're coming to bear witness. Someone at the edge of the chamber gasped. Lyra ignored it. You declared Earth a dead world. That declaration was premature. Keth raised a brow. You bluff. Scan your orbital perimeter, she said. Right now, you'll find signatures you don't recognize. Power spikes where none should be. Silence where your sentries used to report. A quiet alarm began to blink at the edge of the Chancellor's desk. Those aren't warships, she said. They're messages. The first of many. We didn't come to destroy. We came to remind. The Chancellor didn't speak. His silence was enough. Lyra's tone softened, just slightly. We don't want your throne. We don't need your approval. But we will never again ask for your mercy. She stepped back, the silence around her heavy. You called us dangerous. You were right. But not because we attack. Because we remember. And because we never forget who drew first blood. Her eyes locked onto his one last time. You made a choice. And so did we. No one clapped. No one spoke. The council chamber, for the first time in memory, sat in complete and stunned silence. No orders were given. No declarations announced. But the silence in orbit shattered. Imperial systems flickered across multiple decks. Tactical displays warped into static. A coded pulse spread like fire through the networks. Short, sharp, and unmistakably human. One by one, the Empire's satellites went dark. Their eyes closed. Their ears stopped hearing. And across the stars, the unthinkable began to unfold. Lyra remained still as the chamber reacted. Officers scrambled for reports. Delegates murmured. Keth's command console refused input. The Council planet's defense grid, the most secure in the Empire, was blind. You think because we bleed, we break, Lyra said, steady. But you gave us a reason to evolve. Every crater became a classroom. Every ruin, a forge. We didn't rebuild Earth. We transformed it. A feed activated on the central holodisplay without permission. Not from any Imperial source. It showed Earth's sky, stars barely visible behind artificial dust, and then the silhouette of ships slowly emerging through the haze. They weren't elegant. No sleek hulls. No pristine insignias. But they moved with purpose. A fleet forged from desperation. Steel plated with scavenged armor. Engines jury-rigged from colonial scrap. Weapons mounted where they didn't belong. One ship bore markings made from welded metal strips. A child's name. Another showed a mural burned into the hull. An image of a ruined city. Faces etched into its steel, silent and unblinking. The feed changed. Civilizations across the Empire began broadcasting their own responses. Some angry, some ashamed, a few defiant, but all watched. You didn't just attack a species, Lyra said. You taught a galaxy what fear really looks like. And now they see you. The Threx ambassador whispered something to a subordinate. The Zoran delegate stood and left the chamber. Arketh gritted his teeth. You expect us to surrender to scrap and sentiment? No, Lyra replied. We expect you to know you're not untouchable. Her tone sharpened. We won't fire unless you give us reason. But this time, you'll have to think twice. Every time you raise a fleet, every time you plan another bombardment, you'll wonder who's watching, who remembers, and how long it will be before your silence is answered. The Empire had faced uprisings before, but those were fueled by power. This was different. This was memory. Lyra stepped back and inserted a data chip into the console. One file, a list of names. Children, parents, entire bloodlines erased. No demands, no threats, just truth. You murdered our children, she said again, quietly. But their names won't disappear. Not from us. Not from anyone who still breathes. Another alert sounded. More ships dropping from stealth. Not to attack, but to witness. Human vessels. Alien vessels marked neutral. Observers. The Empire's image of control cracked. Too many eyes, too many questions. Lyra nodded once. Her duty done. Her grief delivered like a blade into the heart of arrogance. As she turned, Arketh called after her. Not loud, almost uncertain. What happens now? She didn't look back. Now, you learn what it means to be remembered. The council sat frozen. Not in awe, in awareness. Not of strength, but of consequence. Because the day humanity was broken was not the day it ended. It was the day it became something else. Something permanent. No flags raised. No territories claimed. Just one message, sent without code or translation. We are still here, and we are watching.